You're listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hello, hello. This is Katee Van Horn.
And this is Jackye Clayton, and welcome to the Inclusive AF podcast. I'm so happy we did that. We've been forgetting to introduce ourselves or the podcast for the last couple of episodes. So, in case people were wondering,
In case y'all didn't know where you were, here's where you are. And here's
episode number 357.
Yeah, episode number 9 million. Yeah. Yeah, it's good times. Good times are had by all. Well, we have the very distinct pleasure of having a wonderful guest with us today. And so we're going to jump right in. And so Dr. Parker Walsh would love to have you introduce yourself and share a little about who you are, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I am so happy to be here. As Katee said, I'm Dr. Carol Parker Walsh, and I run Carol Parker Walsh Consulting Group. It is a firm that works with organizations to help elevate leaders at every level, particularly during times of transition or friction or any type of change or development or growth. And we do that through executive coaching, team development, full-scale leadership development programs to support them. We do a lot of psychological safety work. And we do that to really help organizations create cultures where people can thrive and love what they do, and they can retain top talent and have increased engagement and productivity.
I'm so glad somebody's doing that work because it's necessary. Am I right?
Yes. Yes. We have we use a people forward leadership framework that I developed that's all about, focusing on making sure that your people are valued and feel a connection to the work that they're doing. And so the motto that we have is that when people thrive, organizations are inevitably successful. And so when you lean into supporting your people at every level, then you'll definitely, and for me, because, most people leave organizations because of leaders, it's where we lean into really making sure that the leaders know how to be good people leaders, so that their people can thrive in the organization.
And in case anyone's listening and they're wondering, their leader isn't, they're not ghost lit. Like there's such a difficult challenge right now, as we can tell by the overall tenureship has gotten ridiculous. It's like 2 to 3 years now. And so, I mean, and I think people feel so, at one point we started digging down, especially on people that are underrepresented. But now I think it's like, it seems to be hysteria, almost global, especially in the age of AI. And I wanted to jump in and ask you what you've seen different since January 2025 as far as psychological safety that's different than it was the last time we had you on the show.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of upheaval, there's a lot of, kind of chaos, uncertainty that's really testing people's resilience and agility in this time, because it feels like every day, every week, every month you wake up, there's like a new thing to think about or consider in how you do your work. And that's at every level, whether or not, it's financial grants being, taken away, organizations having to commit to shifting how they do their diversity and inclusion work, or how they even talk about it, or if they even can do it, with the threat of funding being kind of pulled from them, how tariffs are impacting their ability to do some of the work, the actual work that they're doing in the organization, how environmental things are impacting, the things that they're trying to do if depending on the agency that they're working with. So there's a lot of chaos right now. And on top of it, with AI, it's dramatically changing how we work, and the way that we work. And so that's also impacting the ability for people to be upskilled in a way that allows them to respond to the constantly moving challenges that they're facing with. So, and then the reason that you're seeing the burnout in leadership is because, overall, there's still the belief that you promote based on intelligence, expertise, and delivering results. I mean, we have been talking about this for years, that just don't promote on that alone, but that is still the number one reason that people get promoted in upper echelons of leadership, without even a conversation of what it means to lead your people, and particularly what it means to lead your people in a VUCA or BANI, whatever, kind of framing that you like environment where there's a lot of kind of chaos and transition within the organization. So it's hard enough to lead people when things are all, hunky dory. It's even more challenging to really understand how to create an environment that's responsive to people's mental well-being, valuing what they do, having career progression, conversations and opportunities, worried about whether or not they're going to have a job, worried or not there's going to be a budget that's going to keep them there. So you're dealing with people with heightened levels of stress. So that makes it even harder to be good people leaders in that regard. So and I think what I have been seeing is organizations, because I've been called in to do this work. So I think organizations are starting to kind of catch the message that we got to do something different. We can't continue to do what we've been doing. We're just at a crisis point. We can't lose the talent we have because we're not even sure if the pool of talent we need is out there. So we have to figure out really how to develop from within. But we haven't been the greatest, employers to our people, and they really don't want to stay. So it's causing them to rethink a lot of things and creating programs earlier on for emerging leaders, not just existing leaders, so that they can start turning the page from this kind of churn that they're seeing in their organization to try to hold on to really good people, develop those good people so that they can actually change the nature of what's happening within their organization. So those are the kind of things that I've been, seeing it in the middle of. And, and like I said, the phone has been ringing a little bit more because of that, to be able to respond to those issues.
Yeah, the one question I have, and kind of follow up on what you just shared, the piece that I'm seeing and I'm hearing even, in my current environment is a lot of folks have been laid off in this DEI space. A lot of those are people of color or people that have been historically marginalized. Culture is taking a back seat, period. And cultures in some places being thrown out the window in lieu of profits. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what do you do? Yes, we want to focus on leaders. Yes, we want to focus on, how do we actually get the right talent in place to coach and develop, but what are you seeing kind of in the culture space in regards to just, no, we just got to keep our heads down and get through this time or whatever?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, I don't work with organizations that don't prioritize that. So, and I know some people have, in my opinion, those who are not having those kind of conversations were looking for an out and they finally had it, and so now they're just running with it. But what I've seen in the organizations that we're having conversations with around how do we do culture now in this environment is that they're changing the name to protect the innocent, if you will. But still having those conversations about how can we continue to do the work, just what are we calling it, how are we classifying it, what does it look like? Where does it belong? Within the organizational structure. So they're having some real dialogue around what does it really mean to embed it in to the entire practice of the organization. So from one perspective, the good thing, the silver lining of this is that what has always been problematic for me is that diversity, equity, and inclusion work has always been this thing over here
Mm-hmm.
that then we kind of try to apply it to the organization, but it's often been a standalone kind of department or area.
Right.
Now the conversation is how do we finally infuse it into the whole culture of who we are as an organization. So as an example, I'm doing some work with some academic universities, and so instead of having their VP of DEI or their manager or director of DEI, they're actually talking about how do we embed it into our institutional effectiveness, right? So what does it mean as an institution overall? How do we embed it into every aspect and every practice of who we are and what we do, where it becomes a true part of our values, it becomes a true part of how we work together and how we show up. And so for me, this could be an exciting time to think about how do you truly integrate it in a way that organizations may have struggled with thinking about how to do it before, because You can't have it as a separate thing anymore. You can't call it that anymore. And if you're really committed to it, then the thought is, how does it get institution? How does it truly, for the maybe first time, or maybe for some places who have been doing the work continually, how does it get embedded into the very fabric and nature of who we are and how we work? So this could be a great potential opportunity for organizations to think of it that way, in ways that they may have subjugated it to something else or someone else's responsibility, or oh, if we have an issue we call the DEI people, as opposed to, no, how are you going to handle this issue, understanding how it's impacting your work, your people, your staff, your team, or whatever. So that's the one silver lining I'm seeing. But you're right, there's a lot of organizations that have just been like, oh well, we can't do anything, so it's over. And it's a shame, but I'm excited to be in conversation with those organizations that are asking the deeper questions on how do we make it a true part of who we are.
100%.
I think I think you're so right. And because so many people, like, it's just going across the board of this, like, like, people that are shocked. And it's funny. It's not funny, but it is kind of funny, because I'm like, don't ask me, I've been Black all my life. I've been dealing with this all my life. Like, this is not a shocker or a surprise.
Yeah.
I think what has been enlightening in a way that I hadn't seen before are people having these aha moments of, I mean, I think earlier it was kind of like what? Like, you didn't know this is happening, but now you seeing it more and more, voices that we haven't heard before. But I think it does go down to a management issue, and we're looking to those people to lead. I was wondering, how can someone implement it? There's people that are in fear, they're afraid of trying to implement any of these changes. And then there's other people that understand the task, but don't have a DEI person or a place to go. Like, what would you say to the people, besides hiring you to come in and doing all these things? Like, let's say this is the first time and they're like, okay, this is my responsibility, I need to do this. Where do you point people, besides to you and to the Inclusive AF podcast, to get some of the information to find out what they should do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I do think they need someone.
Yes.
They're one of the tools that we've used that I think is very much available, even if you were, which is around psychological safety. If you really, and you could pick up, the book, oh geez, I'm blanking on it. Amy Edmondson's work around it.
Yeah.
Her book, she has a book called Teaming, but she has the foundational book that actually describes what it is.
Oh my God, I know what you're talking about, and I'm going to blank on it too. Yes.
I know. And it's crazy because I'm even certified in the work. But I say that because there are articles, there are resources, there are other colleagues that you see doing the work that you can be in conversation with them to ask them questions like, what are you doing? What are some of your best practices? What are the things that we can bring over into our organization? How are you equipping your managers? So there's things that you can do without actually having to hire someone like me or bring someone in to do that work, that you can use as a resource. I know that that main book that talks about it gives examples of things that you can do. And the reason that I use that as a word is because, or that as a framework, is because one of the tenets of psychological safety is around belonging, right? It is about how do people feel safe and, have trust and feel like they belong within the organization and that they're a part of the fabric and, the things that you're doing. So there's concepts within that allows you, but it expands it as well. So there's a foundational piece in there that could be a great starting place that allows you to just become more aware. I think anyone who's a manager or a leader should constantly be, building their knowledge base, and their library of resources to support them to be effective. And I think that's one of the ways to do it. So finding, community, talking to other leaders, talking to other organizations. And I think that is a great foundational resource that people can start having conversations, have, knowledge shares on your team, get the book for everybody on the team and come together once a month and talk about the things that they read and ways that they think they can indoctrinate it into their team meetings, or, how they work together, or in their feedback sessions, what are the ways that they're seeing these principles showing up in how they are in conversation and how they're doing their work together. So there's definitely some things that people can do on their own in order to start the conversation if it's a new conversation for them, that allows them not to necessarily start with the DEI conversation, but just starting with the conversation of, can we even have conversations with each other? Can we have open communication? Do people feel safe to even start the conversation so that we can then build upon it? And I think that is a great starting place with any team or any new manager or even existing manager that's thinking about, how can we start the process if we haven't had that here in our workplace?
I'll tell you, by the way,
The
I
fearless,
created her
hold on.
brain.
It's called the Fearless Organization.
Yes, the fearless organization.
I had to look it up because I was like, how am I spacing on this right now? Sorry, Jackye.
I know. I always tell people menopausal brain. Sorry, it's the easiest thing that I'll space out something that's right on the tip of my tongue. So thank you for finding that reference.
Yes, of course.
I wanted to make sure that if anybody is interested, I use Notebook LLM, and I'm way deep off in AI, and I created her brain. And so I have conversations with Amy that she doesn't know. We've never met. Don't tell her. But if you're interested and need that resource, it's got over 50 instances of times where she's actually spoken. And so it takes all of her books, all of the different things that's publicly, and then you can ask various questions. Like, how would Amy think about this last year? So, I mean, it's not,
Well, Jackye, I'm so glad you brought that up because, you started the conversation earlier, like, with AI and the impact of AI and into our current workplace. And I am a big advocate of leveraging AI and not avoiding it. And so this is a great example of what you said, is a way to leverage AI as a starting place, to be able to start to figure out how to do the work in your group, right? You can, as you said, train it where you can put some information in there, do the paid version and make sure there's some paywalls around it so that, it's protected, as much as you can, in terms of the information. Or if your organization, which most organizations are Microsoft organizations, and so there's some firewalls already around the Microsoft suite, you can use some AI tools that are related to, Microsoft as well, and ask them, have a conversation and ask them, like, here's our situation and here's what our group looks like. And, here's some ideas that I think I have. What do you think would be good resources for me to utilize, or what would you think is a good starting place for me to do that work here in the organization? So I'm a big fan of leveraging. It's here to stay, and it's going to get even bigger. Right. So don't get behind the 8 ball. So figure out ways in which you can leverage it to your advantage. So I'm glad you brought that up as an example.
No, I'm glad, because what was so interesting about this, I just got a certification in AI prompting. And as I'm going through and learning all of these things, I was like, this is DEI work, because it was like, oh, you can't speak to it the way that you want. You have to anticipate what they would have. You have to talk to a robot. And so it was this exercise with Google where they give you a picture and you have to describe the picture, and then it shows you the picture that you described, and you can compare to see how close you got to what was actually there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it would be so great if we could do that with DEI work, where it's like, this is what you said. Let me just show you a picture of what actually this person saw when you said those words. And what the work is to get the words right in order to get the response that you needed is not only DEI work, but it's talent management. Like, if the responses you want is X, you have to do Y. And if you have B, you're not going to get the response. And one of the things that was a wake up moment for me is that on one of the things they said, people like to say that AI didn't give you what you wanted. No, it gave you exactly what you asked
Yeah.
for.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times we look at these environments of work not giving us what we wanted, but it's giving you exactly what they told you they were going to give you, or what you anticipated is different than what they anticipate. And understanding the balance was so much less. I mean, that is something that I don't think we have talked about enough. And of course, the way that we've seen it into the media right now is that everybody is doing more, asked to do more and have more responsibilities, but not given the resources as budgets have been cut and manpower has been cut. Um, what have you seen as far as like the psychological safety now? I think they're calling it, was it, I just saw it was like job hugging. It was something where people are so afraid of leaving their work, but also disenfranchised. There's no loyalty. They don't feel the support there. And people are breaking and staying at their work. And so I'm wondering what have you seen as far as the psychological safety shift in 2025?
Hey, this is William Tincup, and you should know about the You Should Know podcast. It's a topical, fun podcast with Ryan, myself, and a guest, or guests plural sometimes, and we tackle the most timely topics of the day. Give it a look, give it a listen, and subscribe. Thanks.
That
Yeah,
was a
well,
lot of words. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. I want to first say something about what you said about, the AI prompt and people saying I put it in, but it's giving me what I want. Because what I heard you also say is that sometimes we don't know the right questions to ask, right? And because we don't know the right questions to ask, we're making an assumption that whatever we get is okay, as opposed to not doing that deeper work within self, or having conversations to like really get clear on what's the right questions that I should be asking so I can actually get the information that I need. So I felt like I heard that that's what I heard you. That's how I translated what you said, which I think is a very important thing. And it leads into what your the other question about that you just asked me about. So first of all, there's a lot of stress levels are high. People's amygdalas are hijacked right now. And we all know that when that happens, the cortisol floods the prefrontal and we can't think clearly. So we stay in this constant state of stress. And we are living, VUCA is, volatile, uncertain. I always blank on the C, ambiguous environment, right? And so it's when you're constantly in a state of unsurety, then and you don't know what's going to happen, it's hard for you to kind of relax and focus. And so you feel trapped, which heightens your stress, but then you have so fearful of the unknown on the other side of it that you don't make any move in terms of what you should do, because you're like, is it going to get worse? Is it going to, if I'm going to jump out of the frying pan into the fire? For me, part of the work that I do, the cognitive behavioral work that I do, is trying to help people manage their own stress levels. I was just in a conversation today with an executive team who was, really stressing about their board and things of that nature. And I'm like, but let me ask you one question. Can you control the board? They're like, nope. I'm like, so why are we spending 20 minutes like, oh my God, the board, right? So some of it, what I think leaders can help people do, and they need to do on their own, is to how do I manage the environment around me by not focusing on the things that I can't control in my environment, right? And so if I'm so focused on these external things that I really can't impact, then and that's where my attention is. Of course, I'm going to constantly be stressed and not be able to and feel trapped and all of those things that are going on. And I talk to a lot of people who are feeling that right now. They're like, I hate my job. I want to leave, but I need the money. And they're very laissez-faire, or really not even interested in going someplace else or staying, because they have no idea about what that next thing would look like. They just know what's in front of them is not the thing that they want to do. So for me, it's about really leaning into what do I have control over, right? What do I and spending some time figuring out, you know, what does value mean to me? What do I want to do? What are the skill sets that I want to lean into, that I want to utilize more? Maybe they're not in the workplace. Maybe there's a volunteer thing you could do that'll feed your soul because you're not getting it in the workplace. Or maybe there's some other things that you can do that allows you to, feed that desire to feel valued and needed, and that you're contributing something or making an impact, if that's the kind of things that are important to you. So spending some time really leaning into what you have control over, because like I said, we're in chaos right now, and it's really challenging, and it's not just at work, right? And people are and we're being impacted by all of it. So for people's well-being and their mental health and their ability to really function, try to not focus on what you don't have control over, but try as much as possible to focus on what you do have control over. And I think if you get clarity around that, to the earlier thing I was saying, maybe you can learn to ask better questions to really get what you want, as opposed to feeling as if you're trapped and what the information you're getting is what you have to live with. Because maybe there's some different questions you can ask that could change your environment for you in a way that allows you to be more effective and not feel so trapped or miserable in wherever you're at right now.
Or just ask
Yeah.
at all. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's a lot for,
Yeah.
right now. And I appreciate you sharing all of that, because there's so many people struggling. I'm one of those people where it's like, I have Katee. But there's people that don't have a Katee who are just feel so alone.
Yes, yes. So finding your Katee, right? Finding your complex. That's what the C is. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and so that, to my point, is what do you have control over? And leaning into, I need a community, or I need an outlet, or I need, what do I need? Like you said, ask the question. Just first, like, figure that out, and then move into going after those things that'll help you, survive in the time that we're in right now.
I think that's a piece, that sphere of influence piece is such a critical component to this, because I think so much does feel out of people's control.
Yes.
I can't control what's going on outside the four walls of my home, or even inside the four walls of my home, or what I'm hearing and reading and looking at and consuming every day on socials is so overwhelming.
Yeah. So
And
stop that.
yeah, and it feels out of control. Exactly. So stop, like, put your phone down for 5 minutes. Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, one of the things, so I just had lunch with a dear friend of ours last week who is looking for a new role. And she's like, I'm at that point of, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know what comes next. And so she is, to your point, like, has this, like, paralysis of, I don't even know what next step to take. Not, hey, what's my plan on my new role, but what step should I take today to get to what's next? And I think that's a piece too, that, like, it's controlling what you can control, as you said, but it's also just what can I change right now as a leader, as a person seeking a new role, as a person in a role that you're feeling like, what's happening in this company or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
what is your piece of advice or pieces of advice? And I am going to shift to folks that are currently looking for a new role, because I think there are a lot of folks, especially our listeners, again, who have been impacted by this, downstream effect of anti-woke logic. What is your advice to those folks that are looking for a new role, or are having to pivot and think about what's next for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that I've been having those conversations of late. For me, and I don't want to underemphasize this, when you are in a state of panic and stress, and you're consumed with, I don't know what's going to happen, it really does prevent your ability to think logically and calmly about your options. It even prevents you from seeing what could be options, because you are in this state of heightened alert and attack, right? It literally is brain physiology around the amygdala. The cortisone is overflowing. You can't focus and you can't concentrate. You also can't live at that state for too long.
No.
So, and the brain hates uncertainty. And if you live in a space of I don't know what's going to happen, you're going to constantly be iterating that. So, what's important for you to do is to try to give as much clarity to your brain as you possibly can. So, what I say as a first step is to try to just take a step back. I know you're in an environment that you may not like. I know you may be thinking about what do I do and not sure what you're going to do. But for a moment, if you can just put what do I do to the side and start thinking, what do I want to do? What would I like to do?
Right.
What if I were to envision my day, what would it look like? What skills would I be bringing forth to the table? Who would I be working with? What kind of engagements would I have? What type of environment would I be a part of? And just allowing yourself kind of back to what we said a moment ago, asking the questions, just
Mhm.
giving yourself a little moment to answer some questions so that you can begin to get some clarity on maybe what next steps could look like for you. Because we are so trained from a career perspective to always look external at opportunities, right? It's what is that job, what is that company, who are they hiring for? What's that job title? Who has an opening? And then we, kind of contort ourselves into something unrecognizable to fit somebody's external idea of who we should be in that particular role. And when those external opportunities don't seem available, then we feel lost. But what I have seen time and time again, when people take a moment to just answer those questions, to ask those questions and to answer them, what they thought was the next step is not even the next step. That actually, instead of this being the potential pathway being narrow, it all of a sudden becomes expansive because other opportunities and other ideas and other possibilities of what you can do open up, right? I did some work with someone who was in that exact situation, had had a career in pharma and was thinking, well, what else can I do in pharma? And it turned out doing this work, she saw a completely new opportunities in nonprofit that she hadn't thought about. And I know when people think of nonprofit, particularly from pharma, it feels like a big drop, but it's a different thing to go from nonprofit and work for like the Gates Foundation, which is a nonprofit, than working for your local community, humane society or something of that nature.
Right.
Right. So, but it requires you to be able to kind of calm the brain down so that you can engage that prefrontal cortex and allows yourself to think logically about what could be possible for you. And you have to ask yourself some questions to garner that information so that then with that information, then you can maybe put some things into place. Don't think about the next title. Don't think about the next company. Don't think about what the next job is. Think about what skills do I want to put forth? What does my work look like? What does my life look like? What does my environment look like? What are the things that I love to do that I could do all day and twice on Sunday that I want to keep doing? Like, ask and answer those questions and let that inform what could be possible for you to do next. Then look for the things that fit that, as opposed to you looking externally at what's in front of you and getting panicked by what you don't see, because that then opens up a completely different possibility for you. That's the first thing. Then the next thing is that when you have that clarity, this is where community comes in, right? This is where you want to have those resources, that network, so then you can have conversations and say, I'm thinking this is when I think about my next step, it looks like this. What do you think? Does this sound familiar? Who do you know? Who do you think I could talk to help continue to fill this conversation out or frame what I'm thinking about out? And the more you're in community and conversation, the more you'll get that clarity. As I said before, the person that I worked with did that. That was the next phase. And these other opportunities was because she was in conversation networking. She didn't touch her resume. She didn't update her resume. She wasn't trying to, send out 20 million resumes. She was in conversation about what her future looked like and what she wanted it to look like. And people knew people. And before she knew it, she was having interviews with people in a completely different line and area based on those conversations because she had more clarity about what her next step would look like. And now she's doing something amazing that she loves that she never would have thought about has she not done that foundational work. So get clarity, allow yourself to kind of calm for a moment, get clear, expand your network, talk to the people in your network or expand your network, and whoever you talk to, ask who else should I talk to, and share what your vision is. Not that I'm looking for a job or this is what I do. Do you know anybody who can, no, talk about what you have discovered in that first step of the process. And then it'll lead you down the road into something that is more meaningful and let you see that you're more likely to find something you want to do than you probably believe is true for you right now when you're in a state of panic.
Awesome.
Long answer, I know.
But
No,
that was like so amazing because I think that's what I hear so often. People are like, oh, I'm looking for the next job. And it's like, wait. What exactly are you looking for?
Yeah.
Because especially when I was in staffing and people would say, I want to be a manager. And I'd say, do you want more money or do you want more responsibility? And they would say, I want more money. I was like, what about the responsibility? They were like, no. I'm like, okay, so let's figure out how we can get you more money. Like, don't say you want to be a manager because that's a whole different skill set. And I think there are things that we do have to figure out in life too, where it's like, no, I really need to get clear on the end. When you say, look at what you like or what you get, those are things you can control, but also things that you've already done. So you already have that success when you start.
You have that understanding.
The passion of that.
And I think it's exactly what the kind of, I see an underlying theme of like, you have to know the right questions. Because if I come to you, if you know that my last role was an accountant, and I haven't done this work, but actually in the back of my mind, I really don't want to do what I've been doing. I want to do something different, but I haven't thought through what that looks like. And I come to you and say, I'm looking for another job. Your first thought is going to be, oh, let me go find an accountant job for you. Let me go find for you exactly what you're doing now, because you haven't given me any other data or information to suggest that I would look someplace else. But if you came to me and said, I know for the last 8 years or 10 years, I've been an accountant, but I really, as I've done some thought work around what my next step looks like, I don't want to be in accounting anymore. I think I want to stay in finance, but accounting is not what I see myself doing. What I see myself doing is doing more advising or supporting or planning for individuals. That kind of looks like financial management, but not quite in that either. And I'm still working that out. But that's what I'm looking for. That then opens up your mind to, well, who do I know in finance? And maybe what opportunities do I know in finance? And I could say, well, I know this. Does this sound about right? And you can kind of go back and forth. Or you may say, well, man, I have three great friends who are in that industry. Let me connect you with them. And maybe you can have a deeper conversation so you can gain more clarity. But also, here are 3 new references that you would have never thought to give them because they didn't give you anything other than I'm looking for a job and you knew they were an accountant.
Right. And I think those are the conversations that, I love having those conversations. Like, who do you know? Who are you talking to? What are you hearing about, whatever role you might be interested in, and who can give you a different perspective? Like, who can I connect them with? Who can I, to have them chat with that they hadn't thought about? And, I think all of us know you don't find roles by going online and applying. It's who you know, who you're connected to, who your connections are connected to. And I think that's such a critical piece, is that foundation of building those relationships to be able to say, hey, I know Jackye, and yeah, she can go and do recruiting with, her hands tied behind her back, but she can also do these 75 other things that she probably won't even bring up to you in the first conversation or the second conversation, but in the 5th conversation, she might mention it. And so it's also that stuff of like, how do you connect people and how do you connect those dots for people? Because
Absolutely.
you have those blinders on of, I just need to find a job, or I just need to find, whatever. It's hard to do that. It's hard to step.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I work with someone who has spent 25 years in sales, and has a position as a director in a nonprofit now because we had that deeper conversation. I had someone that I was working with that was an assistant director at a company and thought that her next step was to be a director, but then realized that really what she was meant to be was a chief of staff, that's really what she was more inclined to. And now she's a chief of staff with the company, right? And so it's we think we know only
Right.
because we've been conditioned to think this is where I should go, or this is, I've been doing it for this long, what else could I possibly do? But
Right.
my goodness, the sky is the limit because you have amassed a knowledge base, a skill set, a way of thinking, a way of approaching things that would position you to do so much more if you look at it from that perspective, as opposed to the limitation or the lens of a job or a
Mhm.
job description or a title, which is so limiting to just what you said, Katee, that yeah, on paper, or if we look at a job title, we see recruiter under Jackye's name, but there's 75 other things that aren't even considered because we're not looking at the talent and the skills and the knowledge
Right.
and the expertise. We're looking at titles, which
Right.
is
Which
so
is,
limiting. But that's what we've been conditioned to do.
yes.
It's so funny because not only have you been conditioned to do that, it's like I remember talking to my mentor and they were like, I was like, what's next for me? It's like, well, on paper, technically your next role would be like chief people officer. I was like, I don't want to do that. I was like, well,
Hello, this is Michael Vandervoort from the Drive Through HR podcast, where we discuss ideas, trends, and activities that impact HR, talent, HR technology, and the workplace. Our focus is on expanding knowledge and igniting curiosity as we hear directly from people who are shaping the future of the HR industry. Join us.
Yeah.
Right. It's fun. It's fun, Jackye. You totally should do it. It's the best job ever.
And that's what well-meaning mentors do. And that's why I tell people that you have to take control of the process, because if you just go and say, I'm looking for something else, or what should I do, or what do you think? I'm going to give you the benefit of my wisdom based on what's in front of me. And if all I get, what's in front of me is your resume, your current occupation, I'm going to say, well, based on what I know, this is where you should go. And if you don't know how to ask the right questions of that person, you're going to get what you get back. It's the same thing. I keep going back to this. It's like giving AI the wrong prompt or a limited prompt, and you're only going to get back what it's going to give you. But you have to do that deep work before, so that you know the right questions to ask, so you're more directive of the process. Remember, the only thing you have, this is the one thing you have control over. So take control of it, right? Get clear, direct the process. Go to a mentor and say, I know it may look like I'm good for this, but this is what I'm really looking for. Can you support me in that process? Do you have resources, a network, or people that can help me in that process? I mean, that happened in my own career. When before I started my practice, I worked in academia, and I went from directing graduate programs. I was an associate dean, and I had a very well-meaning provost who I love and we're still close to this day, was positioning me to go to do what's next, to be a provost and ultimately a president of a university. I'm like, I have no desire to do that. But if I did not speak up and say, whoa, I'd probably be doing that now, because people saw the potential in me. They said, you'd be great at this. Let's get you ready for it. That would be the next logical step in where we're looking at your career and from what I think is a good place for you to go. If I didn't stop and interject to say, but that's not what I want. When I stopped and asked those same questions of myself, I realized that's not where I wanted to go. And so I was able to make a change. And to the external world, it looks crazy, right? But to you, you live your best life and you only have one crack at it. So, you want to make sure that you're doing the things that are good for you and that honor you.
In talking about AI and looking at that in my newsletter, I just put like a number of jobs of people that have been affected since 2023 when we started seeing all of this. And I think it's at 400,000 people have been displaced from AI. And so what's important about what Dr. Carol Parker Walsh just said, because a lot of people, the next step doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Great point. Oh, wow.
Gone. And so especially software engineers, original, like if they're all competing for the same roles now, those in talent acquisition, all fighting for the same roles. All of these people, like, it's not going to happen. And so it's time to make those changes and thoughts so that and honestly, for a lot of people, this is a gift that they didn't think existed, or else they would be the chief people officer, or they would be the head of director of whatever. And I think especially for those Gen Xers, where it's like there's a lot, and middle management's making a comeback. That's like positive news, Gen Xers, but it also means you're going to have to take a step back, because there are roles that people don't hear of. I mean, my husband, he came in, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on my computer. He goes, "What are you going to do?" I was like, "I'm going to be a prompt engineer." He's like, "What do they do?" I was like, "I don't know." He was like, "Okay." I was just like learning. I'm like, I'm just learning. But I mean, it's also an opportunity to tap into those things that you might have like shoved because of when you did take that job that you felt like you had to take so long ago. That's now a career.
That, this is so fabulous, because what I tell people, if you have clarity around your skills, your expertise, your talents, your abilities, and things of that nature, you can, in a lot of ways, write your own ticket, right? I mean, the problem is people don't feel confident to go into an organization and even say, I notice in your organizational chart, you're missing a key position. This is why you need this position. This is why it's key to your operation and integral for you to be successful. This is what you're missing as a result of not having this position in the organization. And here's why I'm the only person that could do it.
Ooh.
Like, if we had that cellular level of belief in ourselves, not what somebody, because you've been in recruiting. Sometimes people put job descriptions together that are like wish lists, not reality lists, right? And so if you have such confidence, and this is why doing this work initially of really examining, what do I love to do? What am I really good at doing? And oftentimes, and I'll just say this for women in particular, we tend to undervalue our brilliance. Things that come easy to us, we think is a problem because it should be hard. And the things that we're naturally gifted at, we undervalue. But if we took time to really lean into why that's a value add to any position or company or organization, and really owned it and presented it as to why this is what you need, and how we can learn AI enough to leverage the use of it so that we're not replaced by it, but we know how to leverage and use it correctly, even within our role, that helps to advance the agenda or goals or objectives of an organization. We would change the game, because you're right. Right now, the next job or the next step may not be there. And so, but what should be there? What is missing? And what can you bring to the table that can make a tremendous impact in an organization? Don't undersell the fact that just because the job isn't there, that you can't create one or talk them into why it needs to be there. If you can do the ROI and the value add of what you can bring to the table, even if it starts off as a part-time ad hoc project base, and you demonstrate that it needs to be something permanent in the organization, I mean, the sky is the limit right now. I mean, we're in the Wild West a little bit in terms of roles and jobs and responsibilities, because, to your point, how many people have been displaced by AI, and the change in nature of organizations and how they're working. It's an opportunity that's out there for people.
Right.
It is. You're right. And it's a calibration. Like, look at it as a calibration.
Absolutely.
Because it is a gift, because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do a calibration.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and it's a caliber, but it's also like, I'm going to say this, and this is a very antiquated term, so don't judge me too much, but like, it's also like a skills audit of some sort, and like also just like understanding, like you said, going back to what do you want to do, not just what can you do, what is the title you're looking for, but sitting down and going, what am I good at? What do I like doing? All of those things. So I think you get into that panic mode. Even if you're in a great job that you're like, this is good, everything's going great, you still are sitting there going, what else can I do? Or, hey, how do I make sure I'm not on the chopping block next with AI coming in, or whatever it might be? So it's just, it's such a it's a fascinating time to be in right now.
It really is. And what we're talking about goes back to what I said. These are the things in your control.
Yep.
And if you spend time focusing on this versus everything else happening around you, you'll be able to navigate it much more successfully than if you stay in panic mode about all the things that you have no control over right now. Because this you do have control over, and you can
Right.
master the hell out of it.
Right. For sure. All right, my friend. What is one thing, or as you know, we like to do 17 things. What is one thing you want to make sure all of our listeners have heard during this episode? Or what's the takeaway for you, for them?
Yeah, for me, the takeaway is ask the questions. Ask the, spend some time asking yourself the important questions so that you can get in the driver's seat and take control of your next step in your career, in your leadership, in whatever's next for you, in the world.
Awesome. Jackye, what you got?
I am going to say that my air quotes one thing is to stop focusing on the things that you can't control. There is so much that you can control, even if it's just like get sleep or get good food or floss. Like there's things that you can do. So try as much as you can to focus on the things that you can control and lean into that. That was good. That was one thing, I think.
That was one thing. And it's very, very good. I'm going to take Dr. Carol Parker Walsh's advice one step further. Ask ChatGPT all of these questions as well, and have them do a deep search on you. Put your name in there and say, do a deep search on Katee Van Horn or whoever you are, and tell me what I'm good at. Tell me what I should be doing. Tell me what role is next. All of these things, because I think it's such a fascinating, yeah. If you haven't played with ChatGPT in that way, that is some fun stuff. Because I've had to do that with some of our episodes with Jackye and I. Have been like, hey, how do we do this? How do we do this? And it is interesting to do and literally do a deep search, because then it starts going out on the web. It starts going different places trying to find information, which is kind of cool. So anyhow, thank you so much for joining us. We very much appreciate you always taking the time and having some fun with us, having a conversation with us. Where can people find you?
Well, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're hanging out on LinkedIn, you can find me there. You can always go to my website, carolparkerwalsh.com. And if you're a leader trying to figure out how to be a better people leader, I would say check out my podcast, the People for It Leadership podcast, where I interview top leaders to understand how they're building these environments where they're people forward. So if that's the skill set you want to have, I would say find me there as well.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, this is Katee Van Horn.
And this is Jackye Clayton.
Okay. And that's
Oh, wow. Hey.
Hey. Thank you all for joining us at the Inclusive AF podcast. Bye.
Bye.